Good afternoon and welcome to the Henry Schein Dental Academy webinar series. My name is Corinne and I will be your moderator. We are excited to welcome Tiffany Wesley as our speaker today with special guests Dr. Charles Blair and Dr. Grobmyer. In this webinar, they will discuss 5 crucial 2022 CDT code changes and much more. Before we get started, we do have a few reminders for you. At any point during the webinar, if you have questions, please type them into the Q&A section of your control panel, and we will answer them live at the end. Henry Schein is not offering CE credit for viewing or attending this presentation, live or on demand, and this webinar is sponsored by eAssist. Tiffany, Dr. Blair, Dr. Grobmyer, welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Massive thank you to Henry Schein for allowing the 3 of us to be here with you guys tonight on behalf of eAssist. I am Tiffany Wesley. I am the project manager at eAssist Publishing and an insurance administration advisor at Practice Booster. So eAssist has been putting money into the pockets of our nation's dedicated dentists for more than 10 years, you guys. 10 years, it's incredible. Our success consultants pour their hearts and their souls into over 2,100 dental offices and DSOs, and they've actually collected more than $7.95 billion from insurance companies. So eAssist's mission really is to provide peace of mind to dentists and their team members while also offering customized solutions that really help meet you where you're at and fit the gaps that so many practices are struggling with. So I want to thank all of you guys for being here tonight and taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today. I just wanted to take a minute to go over some things that we hope that you learn and take away from tonight. So the first is 5 crucial 2022 CDT code changes, administrative tips, and why they're so important for you to know, how dental billing and coding expertise can not only get you across the finish line faster, but to do that with less stress, and how CDT code changes really mean adapting your internal processes to help reduce unhappy patients. So being a part of so many virtual events over the past couple of years, not only as a presenter, but as a participant, has taught me so much. The first being that really having active participation in the chat significantly increases the retention of the material that we're going to be covering. And the second is that no matter how hard I try, somehow I always end up missing something that someone has said that seems to be really important. And I am so grateful to the people who are writing things in the chat because I can usually look up and then see what it is that I missed. So I'm going to be asking you guys to drop some key points into the chat as we go throughout this webinar, but please feel free to add anything that really resonates with you because somebody else might have missed it and it may actually resonate with them as well. So drop this stat into the chat right now. Our statistics reveal that 70% of dentists are leaving 9% of revenue on the table each and every single month because of missed dental billing steps. So the average dentist practices for 40 years, some even more than that. And so I want to break that down and really see what that 9% looks like over the course of an average dental career. So let's say that you have a relatively small practice and you are bringing in $500,000 of revenue every year. 9% of that is $45,000 of lost revenue every single year. Now multiply that by 40, and that's $1.8 million of lost revenue over the course of your career. Let's up the game a little bit. So what if you're a practice with an annual revenue of $1 million every year? 9% of that is $90,000. Over a 40-year career, that's $3.6 million. $3.6 million in lost revenue. So one of the most common and completely avoidable missed billing steps is actually incorrect coding. So I want to know, are you guys using a coding resource on a regular basis? And I want you guys to mark your answer in the poll right now. And then drop into the chat some of your favorite resources so that everybody can see what those are. How are we doing with our poll, Corinne?
We're still getting some answers in, but it looks like 48% said yes, they use coding regularly, and 16% said no.
So it sounds like we have a lot of people that we can help, which is great. So I am so extremely super excited to have Dr. Greg Grobmyer and Dr. Charles Blair here with me tonight. These are our coding gurus over at Practice Booster, you guys, and they're here to share some insight on why you should not carry old CDT codes into the new year. So Dr. Grobmyer, how many coding changes were there for 2022?
There were a total of 46 changes altogether, and I'm gonna get into that and break it down as to what that actually looks like. But first, I want to mention why it's so critical to keep updated resources for your team members when it comes to insurance filing. Every year there are changes to laws and the rules governing dentistry, and changes to the actual current dental terminology, or CDT, that is set forth by the ADA. So ignoring or not being aware of these changes it's going to inevitably result in delayed or denied claims. If you want to ensure timely reimbursement, you need to stay up to date on these changes. I believe there's going to be a Henry Schein rep reach out at the end with an email. They're going to connect you with our annually updated coding books and resources. I'm very happy to see in the chat box over here that Dr. Blair's books, Coding with Confidence, keep popping up as a great resource. And we love working on those books. We strive very hard to keep them accurate and updated from year to year. So this year alone, the ADA's Code Maintenance Committee, like I said, made a total of 46 changes to CDT 2022. And there were 8 additional updates that happened mid-year of last year in 2021. We're going to discuss a few of these changes. First, I want to kind of talk about the differences in the types of changes that were made. First, there were 16 new codes, okay, and that's exactly what it sounds like. It's an entirely new code that's needed to fill a gap in the CDT code set. Maybe it's a new procedure, or it may make the coding of existing procedures more clear or specific. The deleted codes, there were 6 deleted codes for 2022, and that's where a code is removed from the code set. It's a code that's no longer needed, or it's deemed obsolete. So now here's where it gets a little more confusing. There's 2 types of revised codes. There's substantive revisions, and then there are editorial revisions. Now, the substantive revisions are changes that actually change the inherent meaning of a code, or it's altered in a way that changes what it represents, its scope, what it's talking about, and specifics about it. We had 14 of those revised code changes. We also had 10 editorial revisions. Now, an editorial revision is merely just a change of punctuation or spelling or even replacing a word, but it doesn't change the inherent meaning, purpose, or scope of the code. So back to, we had those 8 updated codes. Those happened in mid-year of CDT 2021. The CMC decided they couldn't wait on this. They added the COVID-19 vaccination codes. They felt that couldn't wait until the Code Maintenance Committee meetings, which happens in March, and could not wait for the new CDT 2022, which starts January 1. They needed those codes mid-year last year, so they did do an update. They just were not in the initial code set at the initial introduction of CDT 2021. So let's look at some of the deleted codes from the 2022 update. So the first two codes here dealt with the provisional splinting of periodontally mobile teeth, with D4320 being intracoronal and D4321 being extracoronal. Now, there were no codes, however, for splinting teeth together for a longer period of time or permanently. The nomenclature and description of these codes also implied that the procedure was limited to the patient's natural teeth, and the splint was expected to be in place for a limited period of time. So they did away with those two codes, deleted 4320 and 4321 from the CDT code set, and added two new codes. So here's your bonus content. These codes, 4322 is now the new intracoronal splinting code, and 4323 for extracoronal splinting, and this does not put a time limit on how long those teeth can be splinted together. So it removed that provision from those codes. Also note that these are not the codes to use when dealing with tooth reimplantation or stabilization of an accidentally avulsed or displaced tooth. Stabilizing teeth that are loose due to trauma requires reporting D7270. Okay, so looking on to these orthodontic changes, Dr. Blair, why don't you talk about the ortho changes that were deleted?
Thank you, Greg. It's really a pleasure to be here this evening. And as you notice on the slide, he has covered two of the provisional splinting codes that are deleted, and we have three orthodontic codes involved. The first orthodontic code I want to talk about is code 8690. This was previously used as a transitional billing code. It was a way for the orthodontist who didn't start the case to report the continuation of care. Now the second treating orthodontist would simply make a quote for completing the case on either a limited or comprehensive basis. So code 8690 is deleted. Also, we have some subcategory coding here. The interceptive treatment, this now has been eliminated. And so really orthodontics has gotten a lot simpler. It's either going to be a limited case or it's going to be a comprehensive case. And the limited subcategory also had changes that were made.
So now we're going to look at D0120, which is probably one of the most commonly used codes in your practice. This was revised for 2022, and it does change the scope of its practice. So the scope of the code. So how so? It added the language that the findings are discussed with the patient, the part that's there in the red. Okay, so this clarifies that the procedure should always include a conversation with the patient to review and explain the findings of the periodic oral evaluation. This might include the definitive diagnoses or areas of concern, or the fact that the mouth seemed healthy with no areas of concern. Regardless of whether it's mandated or not, taking the time to be present with your patients, listen to their concerns, and properly communicate what you discover, that's always going to help build rapport with the patient and cement those relationships. So it's something you should be doing anyway, but now it's actually mandated by the code. So do note also that this code requires a head and neck oral cancer evaluation. It's a mandatory part of the code. This was a new addition to both D0120 and D0150 in CDT 2021. So this is a fairly recent revision. This year, they've added it into D0180, the Comprehensive Periodontal Evaluation Code. And so those changes make it mandatory for a evaluation of oral cancer. So it's no longer an optional service. It is a required part of those exams.
Okay, let's look next at a new code, 3911, the intraorifice barrier. And successful endodontic treatment requires a coronal seal to prevent recontamination of the canal system. The best time to place the permanent restoration is really immediately after obturation while the tooth is still isolated under a rubber dam. However, this is not always practical, and in many cases, as you know, there's a temporary restoration, and then the case comes back to the restorative doctor and so forth. So this new code closes the gap in the CDT code set, as it previously did not address the placement of an intraorifice barrier when the treatment or when the permanent restoration is not placed immediately upon completion of the root canal. So AAE said to go ahead and submit this code. They want the code to be utilized and submitted, but just because there's a code does not mean that it's going to be paid. And the insurance industry will probably say that this code is inclusive of the root canal procedure. So remember again, just because we have a code for something does not mean that it's going to be paid.
All right, we've got a new code in prosthodontics, a couple of them actually. We represented one of them here. There's actually 4 changes to prosthodontics. 5227 is going to be the immediate maxillary partial denture with a flexible base. The reason this was here, and 5228 is going to also be the immediate mandibular partial. It's going to be the other half of that. These are those thermoplastic resin dentures, things like Valplast, Flexite, TCSI Flex. Those are common names that you may have heard. There was no code for an immediate version of these flexible base partials. So these codes were added to fill that gap.
Okay, let's look at a revision here. Code 6051. It's the interim implant abutment placement. And in the past, it has been for both placement and removal. And so the insurance industry pretty much, as you know, pays for that procedure. And if it's something temporary, also for the removal. But the code committee is wanting things to get more specific in the terms of tracking codes and so forth. And so the code, like I say, previously included placement and removal. And so this clarifies. We've also got a new code, 6198, that is not on the slide, and it's for the removal component. So in other words, we're going to place it, and that's code 6051, and we're going to remove it, code 6198. Now keep in mind again, this removal probably is not going to be paid by the insurance industry. They're going to say that the removal is inclusive in the procedure, but still though we should code exactly according to the code maintenance committee. We code what we do regardless of what the reimbursement might or might not be.
Okay, and the last one that we're going to talk about today, and notice we're only talking about 5. There were 46 total changes, and so we're just kind of hitting a few of the highlights. We do have some resources that have a much more extensive explanation of these changes that you guys need to be aware of, and so please research that. But this one, the 9947, this is filling another gap. It's a new code. It's the custom sleep apnea appliance fabrication and placement. So this new code reports the fabrication and placement of a custom sleep apnea appliance. There wasn't a code for this. Before it was a 999 code, and while it's a new dental code, this is still a medical condition. Please note that dentists, most of the states are not allowing dentists the diagnosis of sleep apnea within their scope of practice. So the diagnosis of sleep apnea is generally done by a sleep physician to make the actual diagnosis, and then the dentist can then make the custom sleep apnea appliance. There's a couple other codes, kind of new codes that are associated with this. That's the D9948, which is the adjustment of a custom sleep apnea appliance, and D9949, which is the repair of a custom sleep apnea appliance.
Thank you so much, Dr. Grobmyer and Dr. Blair. I'm telling you guys, if I ever get hung up on something and I don't know the answer, these are my friends that I call. Like Dr. Grobmyer said, there were 46 changes to CDT in 2022, and these are only 5 of them, plus some of the bonus content that you got in there. Making sure that you guys have the most current and updated coding resources is really critical to revenue cycle management. So something that's important for you to know here, and I want you to drop this in the chat because I want you to take this home with you, is that no practice is immune to the possibility of an insurance audit. I'm going to say that again. So no practice is immune to the possibility of an insurance audit. This is regardless of whether or not you're in network or you're out of network. And there can be some confusion in there with this because some people have this understanding that if I don't participate with insurance, then it doesn't apply to me. And that's just not the case, unfortunately. So if you're in network, most likely there is going to be a provision in your provider contract that specifically addresses audits and the responsibility that you have to comply as a participating provider. If you're out of network, your obligations to comply are most likely going to be addressed by state insurance regulations for fully insured plans and with ERISA for self-funded or federally funded plans. So these audits are something that are performed on a regular basis by our payers to really guarantee that not only are contractual obligations being met, but that state and federal government mandates are being upheld as well. And the sole focus of these audits is really to verify 3 things if we condense it and break it down. And that's that the treatment being billed was necessary, met the standard of care, and that it was reported accurately. So something else to note here is that very few providers are just randomly chosen for these audits. Most of them are purposely selected because of patterns in their billing history. This goes in the chat, you guys. This is something you need to know. Most are purposely selected because of patterns in their billing history. So the golden rule of dentistry is to really always code for what you do. And without up-to-date coding resources, you really have no idea if what you're reporting is even accurate. And it's putting you and your practice at an unnecessary risk for audits and lost revenue. So coding correctly is actually a team effort. It really takes a village, you guys, seriously, to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. We see practices all the time investing in these top of the line materials and equipment and all of the bells and whistles from a clinical standpoint. Yet for whatever reason, they're not making that minimal investment into these coding resources that can truly yield a significant return on your investment. So please, please, please make sure that you reach out to your Henry Schein field service rep for more information on how to get all of these amazing tools and resources into those hands of your entire team. So now it's really time to look at how billing these codes correctly, all 7,000 plus of them, affects your practice revenue, but not only your revenue, your patient trust. So I want to revisit what I said earlier about incorrect coding and its impact on your collection ratio. And I want to take another poll, and I need you guys to tell me, and Dr. Gray and Dr. Blair and I, what your monthly collection ratio is. So if you're not sure, how you would go about doing this. You would do this by dividing your net collections and your net production. So if there's a big difference between your gross production and your net production, this is not a collections issue. This is a write-offs issue. And it's something that you're going to need to dig into a little further. So net production really tells us how much you can actually collect and put into the bank after write-offs. And then net collection tells us how much revenue that we're really actually bringing in after our refunds. So Corinne, how are we doing on our poll?
All right, results are still coming in. It looks like 10% said less than 70%. And results kind of vary, but people who are consistently over 98%, that number is around 14% right now.
I feel sad. Okay. There's news. There's good news, right? This is why you guys are here. We're here to help you. So the average dental practice collection ratio is actually 91%. So if you're somewhere around that area, you're just like everybody else, right? Our eAssist valued client average collection ratio is 99.3%, you guys. 99.3%. Can you believe that? That is over 8% higher than the national average. So what would collecting nearly 9% in additional revenue mean for your practice? What would that do for you? So I know I said this earlier, but it's worth repeating, so I'm going to say it again. 70% of dental practices aren't collecting what is rightfully owed to them because of these missed dental billing steps. So it isn't just important to know the dental codes. You really need to have experts that have the time and the knowledge and expertise to really understand the insurance requirements for reimbursement. Our dental administrators wear so many different hats, you guys, just in the course of a single day. And I know this because I have been one. They are checking patients in, they are checking patients out. They're filling in for somebody because they called in sick. They are the party planner, they're the plumber, they're the therapist, they're the person that does everything, right? So there are so many other things that they really could be doing to serve not only your patients, but their teams. And it doesn't include spending hours upon hours on the phone with insurance companies. So one thing that we have found is that many practices are either not following up on outstanding claims at all because they literally just don't have the time, or they're not following up frequently enough. So best practice for revenue cycle management is to follow up on those outstanding claims every 14 days. Not every 30 days, every 14 days. And that also doesn't mean running your outstanding claims report on the first, following up on some of them, and then 14 days later, following up on the rest, right? You're gonna run that report and you're gonna follow up on every single claim that's on there. And then 14 days later, you're gonna follow up again. So fun fact, only 33% of denied claims are ever actually appealed. 33%, can you believe that? Put that in the chat. I want you guys to take that home with you. 33%. This is really confirmation that money is being left on the table because of a lack of time or knowledge on how to fight for this reimbursement. For instance, there are some payers out there who will automatically deny things like buildups, the first submission or the first go around, but then they'll turn around and they'll reimburse for them once an appeal is filed. And people don't realize this, or they don't have the time to spend filing all of these appeals. So if you don't have set protocols and accountability in place for following up on these claims that haven't been paid yet, you're wasting precious time that you could be using to file these appeals, or you could miss out on your chance to appeal at all. So something else that's really important for you guys to know, and you can put this in the chat if you want to, is to make sure that you know what the appeals process is for all of these different plans that you work with. this is critical for revenue cycle management because they all operate differently and they have their own rules. A pro tip is to make a spreadsheet that really allows you to keep track of all of your plan data in one location, and make a column for how each of these plans or what their appeals process is for each one of these. So you've got easy access and something that you can reference super quick anytime you need to follow up or file an appeal.
You know, this is just so important, Tiffany. I've seen over many, many years, you know, the foundation is the doctor's clinical notes. If it's not there, it never happened. And
Right.
then the narrative, of course, cannot be more than 80 characters. And the narrative should reflect what is in the doctor's clinical notes. And then, like you say, some of the payers out here are rejecting, for instance, core buildups the first time through. But yet upon appeal, if you do have the correct documentation and so forth there, you're going to get paid. So there's money really left on the table. And to me, what I've seen is that there just doesn't seem to be enough time with the business staff to jump through the hoops of doing this every 14 days. And it is just so critical. So farming out some of this really makes sense where we're leaving so much money on the table.
Right, right. Or, reallocating, coming up with different systems that you've got in practice to make it work for you, right? So something else that's going on, and it's happening all over the country right now, it's a very real problem, is this struggle with staffing shortages, right? And the absolute best dental billers have extensive knowledge and training in coding and in insurance administration. So if your practice is one of the gazillions across the nation that's really struggling with this, you really have three options on how you want to move forward or handle this situation. The first is you can hire a warm body. You can hire a warm body and you can suffer the consequences later, because I promise you that you will. The second option is to hire for personality, hire somebody that's coachable, and provide consistent and ongoing training and education and quality resources to bring them up to speed. Or your third option, because all of those things take time, is to outsource to the pros who are already experts in this, that this is what they do best. And it allows you to do what you do best, which is really taking care of your patients. You may actually, in fact, have the best dental biller of all time working for you in your office, or maybe you're one of them, which is amazing. And we love that. But one question I really want you to ask yourselves is, do you or does somebody on your team have other skill sets that are being underutilized because they're so focused on the insurance administration side of insurance? If this is the case, this is really compromising the integrity and the growth of your practice. So in business, and I know everybody's heard this, and I know it's a quote and I don't know who said it, but we have to work smarter, not harder, right? We have to figure out our time management and what the best use of our time is. So there's a reason that we update our Coding with Confidence, our Administration with Confidence, our medical dental cross-coding books every single year. And that's because codes change, laws change. And in fact, the entire dental billing industry right now, the whole landscape, is becoming more and more complex. And what this means is that it's taking more dedicated time focusing on these things in order to keep profits flowing and revenue like coming into the practice. And when you are so dedicated and focused onto the insurance side of things, sometimes our patients feel that in a very real way. Our patients notice when they have to compete for your attention. They can feel your stress. They can feel your tension. All of these things when you are overwhelmed and you are running out of arms and legs and brain power and everything else. Maybe you're watching this right now and you're an office manager and you love insurance and it makes your heart smile. It's like the one thing that you can do. Or if you've got an office with a closed door and you can go in and you can shut the door and you can work on insurance for a little bit. I understand, I've been there. And you can love it. But if you are finding that you are stretched so thin because you are having to adapt and pivot every 5 seconds, outsourcing may actually be the answer to help you find more of that work-life balance that we're all kind of looking for, right? And to give you more time, but also the energy to really invest in your team and in your patients. Or maybe you're watching this webinar tonight and you're a dentist and you are an amazing clinician. This is what you went to school for. You are a pro, you know what you are doing, and you are the best of the best. You are elite, right? But if your business team is distracted, if they are taking too long to answer the phone, if they're putting patients on hold for an extended amount of time, or maybe, and I've seen this before, maybe they are ignoring them completely when they walk in the door because they have been on hold with insurance for 30 minutes and they just now got through to a real person. And they're like, are you kidding me right now? I'm not hanging up this phone. And I know any of you that have dealt with insurance, you know that struggle is real, right? But when that happens, the entire quality of that patient's experience has plummeted. It is plummeted. And now the quality of your clinical skill set that you have worked so hard for becomes irrelevant because they can't get past your front desk. So taking care of our patients really starts with making them feel safe, heard, and seen. So in his book, The Speed of Trust, the one thing that changes everything, Stephen Covey says, the trust we have in people and in organizations comes in part from believing they do care. And unfortunately, sometimes our patients lose trust in us. And that happens when their experience feels impersonal and they feel like you don't care about them. When they feel like their appointment's being rushed, like they're on some kind of conveyor belt going through an assembly line. Or when they receive an EOB in the mail from their insurance company saying that their treatment has been denied, when in reality, it's all because of a mistake that we made. Or maybe they get a statement in the mail asking for additional payment for treatment that is way over and above what was quoted to them on their treatment plan. That those things don't go over well. But the good news is that we can build a trust with our patients, and we can do that by making them feel connected and important. And this means being present physically, mentally, and emotionally. It means greeting them when they walk in the door, making eye contact, and really doing everything that we can to build and nurture these relationships. We can also build trust with active listening and taking time to make sure that our patients understand their diagnosis, that they know why treatment's being recommended, how this treatment is meeting their needs, and then giving them the time and opportunity to really ask as many questions as they need so that they can make an informed healthcare decision. We can also build trust by being thorough and submitting clean claims with accurate coding, always accurate coding, and by verifying their insurance and having a comprehensive understanding of their plan before they even walk in the door. And this means their frequencies, their limitations, exclusions, fee schedules. Is it self-funded or a fully insured plan? All of the things that go into that. And the reason that we need to know that is so that we can provide accurate estimations of their patient responsibility so they don't get these surprise statements in the mail. So the number one reason why patients leave a dental practice is because they feel neglected. The second is because they feel deceived, like we have lied to them when they're presented with an incorrect treatment plan. So I want you guys to take a minute right now and drop into the chat, if you will, 3 things that your practice can do differently or you can improve on to build trust with your patients. So pop them in the chat. And then during your next meeting, I want you to ask your team to do the same thing and then talk through all of these and come up with one, just one, that you are all committed to implementing, and then spend the next 30 days dedicated to seeing that through. And you can do that by creating accountability in your morning huddles. So in your morning huddle, you're going to say, okay, what's working? What's not working? What can we do differently today to help us meet our goal of building trust with our patients? Time management, follow through communication. I've seen that a lot. Teach, explain, answer questions. Yes, absolutely. You guys are right on point. So this is going to come as a shock to you guys, but we're all human. We are all human beings, and we all have the same 24 hours available to us in any given day. And it's really important that we kind of pause and we ask ourselves, what's the best use of my time? Learning how to code correctly is an absolute must, right? That is a non-negotiable for many reasons. But does your team or you specifically need to be handling the administrative side of insurance? If your answer is yes, that is awesome. We love our insurance people out there. But I want to ask you, what are you doing to continually educate yourself on clean claim submission and new laws and regulations? If I asked that question and you were like, no, we don't need to be handling it, I don't want to do it anymore, somebody tell me what to do, then your next step here is to really research and look into what your options are for outsourcing. Every single person on your team should be able to focus on patient care, the patient experience, and making sure that it is amazing, and really growing the dental practice, right? And if dental billing is causing your practice to lose focus, if your team can't stay focused on patient care, patient experience, and growing your practice, dental billing doesn't have to do this, you guys. There are options and there are solutions. So eAssist offers so many platforms for learning and education and training for your teams, not to mention the vast array of solutions to really deliver peace of mind to practices all over the country. So whatever you need for your practice, that choice is yours. Just know that there are options and resources out there available to you. So I really want to thank you guys for sharing your time with us tonight. You could be doing anything that you want right now, and you have chosen to invest your most valuable currency, your time, into your personal and professional growth. I think that speaks volumes for the leadership that you guys are bringing into your practices. I also want to say thank you to Henry Schein, as always, for making education a top priority. We are education people here, so thank you. You really provide an incredible platform for helping practices grow. And to my friends and my work family, Dr. Grobmyer and Dr. Blair, thank you so much for being here with me tonight. I think it is the funnest time when we can all get together and do these things. And I know that people are dying to ask some questions for you guys, some coding questions. So let's go on over and hop over to the Q&A.
What I'd like to do, Tiff, is I noticed in the Q&A a couple of questions, and I think I'll just address 2 or 3 of those very quickly, and then the others can chime in. But the question was that the person was having trouble with getting paid for the gingivectomy done for restorative access. Understand that we have 2 gingivectomy codes, 4210, 4211, that are related to perio gingivectomy for perio reasons, and the payers want to see the probing and charting the whole bananas. The code committee voted, and if you look at the code maintenance committee, the payers are kind of on one side of the table, and then the dentist, the various specialties on the other side of the table, and they don't necessarily see eye to eye. And in terms of this gingivectomy for restorative access, the dentist wanted it, but the payers pretty much said, well, you can pass it, but we consider this to be a part of the crown prep. So if you're prepping a crown, you need some soft tissue management. That's a part of it. If I'm doing, say, a lower facial composite on a lower canine, and I need to clip some tissue out of the way, that's a part of the deal, is what the insurance companies say. The second question that was listed was this new 3911 code that I covered, the intraoral orifice closure. It's really a step of the root canal. And the question was, can the restorative dentist use that code? And the answer is yes. If the restorative dentist is doing the endo, and then the restorative dentist, having completed the barrier, could then do the restorative process. I think many endodontists are already actually doing this step. We've never billed it or reflected on it. But like I said, AAE, the Association of Endodontists, they want this code used, but you can expect that the insurance industry is going to say that it's included in the process. And so keep in mind that just because there's a code does not mean that it's going to be reimbursed. And these are two things that I pointed out here that relate to that. And so the question was too that can this be included in the crown prep, these procedures? And again, if you try to bill this gingivectomy separately or this endodontic procedure separately, again, the payers can say that that is an all-inclusive situation and they're not going to pay that separately.
Right.
I noticed there's quite a few questions actually popping up in the chat. If you guys could put it in the Q&A, if you've got questions, we'd love to be able to see it there.
Helps us filter through them a little bit better than when they're.
It does. It's kind of hard to find them in the chat. I'm having to dig through and try to find. Someone asked, where are we able to see all these new codes? I did want to refer you on our website at practicebooster.com. We do have a free downloadable PDF that goes through all 46 of these new changes. It doesn't go into them in detail and things like our books and other resources do, but it does list what the changes are. And so that's a quick reference guide that you guys, probably everybody in here, would benefit from. So you can go to practicebooster.com and find that. I think that was also put into the chat.
eAssist also has that, Greg, as far as the changes. So there's several sources out there, and look to Henry Schein, for these resources, and they're found, really several places. So it's very important. Some of the softwares also release what the changes are, and so forth.
Yeah, and the Henry Schein reps, I believe, are going to be sending out an email at the end of this that's got links to a lot of these resources that we're talking about right now. So
just get with Henry Schein. They'll tell you where to go.
Get with your reps, absolutely.
Exactly.
So,
do you see some of these other questions, Greg? Do you want to take any of these?
Yeah, kind of looking at some things. Question about implant bridge coating for porcelain fused or for all porcelain crowns, coating for bridges over implants, and which codes are appropriate for that.
This is a big one. We get this a lot, don't we?
Yeah, the difference between you need to know what system you're using, whether you're talking about a a screw retained or implant supported abutment, or are you talking about, which one of those you're using is going to be dependent on which code you get. If you've got an implant supported or screw retained, that's the UCLA type crown. If you're not doing it as a single crown, or you're doing it as an abutment, the code for that is actually a 6075. Okay, you're still going to use the normal Pontic code. That would be the 6068 that you're going to use with everything. But if it's an abutment supported bridge over an implant, that's going to be the 6056 for a prefabricated abutment, or a 6057 for a custom abutment.
So we've actually been getting this question that comes in a lot, because some labs will fabricate an abutment, right? And it's still glued into the crown or the bridge before it's actually placed in the patient's mouth. It happens outside of the mouth, and then inside of the mouth, that's screwed into place. This is still a screw retained, either it's a single unit crown, or in this case, a bridge, right? So do you want to help with that a little bit? Did I just confuse everyone?
Yeah, let me jump in on that. There's basically two systems. There's the abutment supported crown, and that means that the dentist is putting two separate pieces in the mouth independently. So I'm putting in the abutment first. That could be a custom abutment. Let's say that's 6057. And then I'm cementing the crown on top of 6058. So those two are billed independently. The lab is going to charge for the crown. The lab is going to charge for the abutment, and both can be billed. Now, the other system is the one-piece screw retained crown. So listen up. The laboratory makes the crown and, of course, charges. The laboratory makes the abutment and charges. And then the laboratory charges for putting them together. And there's a charge for that. Then it's shipped to the doctor, and now the doctor is putting a one-piece screw retained crown in the mouth. And if it's ceramic, as an example, it's going to be code 6065. Now, that fee has got to reflect the higher charges. So in other words, my 6058 crown fee is not going to be the same as my 6065 crown fee. So 6065 is going to be an all-inclusive fee. It's going to be a higher fee. Now, the frustration is some of the PPOs have the same fee for both of these two crown types, and yet the lab bill is substantially higher when they're charging for the crown, the abutment, putting it together, the whole bananas. So that's the difference. The one-piece screw retained crown, the restorative doctor is going to the mouth with that one piece and screwing it in. The other system, we're putting in two separate pieces, the abutment first, and then the crown on top of that.
Going back to the Q&A, I see a question here at the very bottom about the No Surprises Act that came out. We do have an article on that in our most recent ISN, the Insurance Solutions newsletter that comes with Practice Booster. Essentially, the ADA has put out a statement that says it's not going to apply to dental offices. We have a carve out, and so that is, for those who don't know what that is, the No Surprises Act it was intended as protection if you go to the emergency room and you may be going to a hospital that's covered under your insurance, but the anesthesiologist is out of network, and all of a sudden you've got this big bill that you didn't know about. This is legislation that was passed this last year and put into place in order to prevent people from ending up with these big major medical bills. And so the language was very ambiguous. There's still some things some regulations that they're nailing down. So if anything changes, we're going to be sure to put that out in our newsletter and other things. But as for right now, the ADA has come out with this statement, and all our other sources kind of seem to say the same thing, that this is not going to be something that you're going to have to worry about too much for dentistry. We do suggest always having signed treatment plans, making the patients aware of the charges that they're going to be getting. If changes happen in the middle of treatment, your filling turns into a root canal and a crown, you need to stop right then. You need to stop, sit up, get both informed consent and financial consent before continuing on. This is just, extra coverage, something you should be doing anyway, but in general, no surprises is not going to apply.
Yeah, and that's not just verbal consent.
Right. Written consent, consent
written
forms.
Consent, super important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Looking at some of these other ones, teledentistry codes. There's 2 codes for teledentistry. I know a lot of people have been doing that during COVID especially. There's 2 kinds. There's the 9995 code. That is synchronous. That means real time over Zoom. You're talking face to face. That is the code that you'd bill for that, 9995. And then there is asynchronous, which is 9996. That's a code that's if you're not live talking to the person, they may be filling out a web form or emailing back and forth. And so if it's not live, that's an asynchronous teledentistry appointment.
And the code, the individual wanted to know what other code could be billed out. It would be the 9995 under most circumstances, along with code 0140, the limited exam. Now, you're going to have, though, a component, a visual component to this. Also, it does vary from state to state as far as what the state board will permit. So, this has died down somewhat at this point, but to specifically answer that question to that individual, it was 9995 plus code 0140 plus go to the ADA. They've got some downloadable information again on teledentistry, and we have published in Practice Booster also, and with our books, if you look up these particular codes, the 9995 code for additional information.
Do one of you want to answer this question? If an existing patient has a new insurance, can we bill a 0150 instead of a 0120 at the pro fee appointment? So they're a patient of record.
Well, as far as code 150, it specifically is for new patients, and it also can be for established patients. So listen very carefully. In other words, when could I use code 150 again? The code says that if the patient is absent the practice 3 years, in other words, they've disappeared, now they're coming back into the practice, we could charge out code 150. The second reason that we could use 150 is if there's been a massive change in their health history, it necessitates us, say, talking with their physician, then we could use code 150 again. Now that's what the code says. Some people interpret that I can use code 150 every 3 years, and that's absolutely untrue. And then finally, how do the payers treat this? And they basically say hogwash. We're going to pay code 150 once in a lifetime, and if you try to use it again, then we're going to downgrade it to code 120. So again, we've got these codes out here, but it's up to the payer as to whether they're going to pay them or not.
Yeah, I want to say too, reach out to your Shine rep or on an email that I'm getting ready to pop up here on the screen. If you want access to a link to some of the educational webinars and videos that we have, we have a whole section on things that have to do with all of these different exam codes and what you can do and what you can't do. So you may want to check those out. Looking along here, do we have time, you think, for one more question?
Yeah.
What was the denture code that you talked about for Valplast changes?
That specifically, that code was for an immediate Valplast. And so those were the D5227 immediate maxillary and D5228 immediate mandibular with flexible base. So that's for Valplast and any of those thermoplastic type restorations. But that is for an immediate placement. There were already codes in place for traditional, normal Valplast partials.
Yeah, your traditional Valplast would be the 5225 and the 5226. That's the difference. The new codes are for immediate that Greg covered.
Awesome. Thank you all for the great presentation this evening. This was amazing. If anyone has any outstanding questions, you can email us at webinars@henryschein.com. It's the email right there on the screen. And to view and register for upcoming webinars, you can go to henryscheindental.com/webinars. And as a thank you for attending, everyone will receive the recording via email in the next week. So thank you all for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on future webinars. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Of course.
Bye-bye.